Hello, and welcome to week 2 of EDEL 414ZA. I'm very excited to have seen your work from week 1. You all did a great job. I will be providing additional feedback and scores here in the next day or two. But in order to get started for week 2, let's go ahead and start by exploring our identities. That is our topic for week 2. That is what we're going to be focusing on and really looking at, this exploration of our identities, because I believe as teachers we first need to know who we are as individuals in order to better help our students know who they are. So let's go ahead and start. If I click on our little presentation here, we're going to look first at how we can be purposeful in our opening experiences with students. In the text, our author talked about this being purposeful. She gave some tips on how we can do that. So I'm going to read through these, and as I read through them, I want you to think about how you've seen this in classrooms or how you might apply this in your future classroom. So the first one is engage students in self-identifying and self-reflection. Second is honor their own families, cultures, and language. Third is to negotiate their identities in this world. Fourth, connect and wonder about the identities of others. 5, affirm who they are. 6, speak their truths and accept what others say as their truth. And 7, co-construct what it looks like and feels like to share the planet with other human beings. So as you thought about this, as I was reading through them, can you come up with some examples from your own professional practice, either being in schools or having experienced any of these yourselves? Perhaps you saw for engaging students in self-identifying, self-reflection, or honoring their own families, cultures, and language, you may have seen in classrooms teachers doing all about me books or having a star of the week or other examples like that where they celebrate individual students and their backgrounds. When it comes to connecting and wonder about the identity of others, you may have seen teachers do maps where they have the origins of each student and then they pull a string into the center where they are all located now, kind of showing those connections. Affirming who they are, you may have them bring in cultural symbols from their own background or even have parents come in. I think those are probably the most common, 1, 2, 4, and 5. When it comes to 3, 6, and 7, I think these are a little bit more abstract, something we may not have seen. But one way I think we can negotiate their identities in this world is to really help students explore other cultures through either literature, videos, pen pals, really learning about others in the world and then how that relates to their identities. When it comes to speaking their truth and accepting what others say as their truth, number 6, again, I think it's really about having that safe classroom environment where others can share their thoughts and opinions without feeling like they're going to be judged or turned upon. And finally, co-construct what it looks like and feels like to share the planet with other human beings. Again, I think that can really be about looking at making those connections cross-culturally and across the world so your students can really understand that their world isn't just about them in their classroom and in their community. It's actually a much larger world, and they need to think about how they can connect to that. So being purposeful through opening experiences. This is something as future teachers I really think you can hone in on and help you to prepare your classroom and get to know your students. There are a few other things we can do to really be purposeful and getting to know our students, and that's what we're going to focus on for this week, is really getting to know ourselves first and then translating that into our classrooms. So if we scroll down just again to our next slide, we're going to see this little prompt here. It says, what comes to mind when you hear and see the word identity? So I want you to stop and think about that. What do you hear inside your head? What is that voice of your prior experiences and prior background knowledge bringing to mind when you hear the word identity? Take a minute to please pause the video and individually write down your ideas on a piece of paper. What comes to mind when you hear or see the word identity? Okay. Hopefully you've all had a chance to do that. This is kind of our starting point to think about identity, how we identify ourselves and our world. And that will take us to our identity anchor charts. Some of the words you might have come up with could have related to culture, heritage, it could have related to background like family, prior experiences. It relates to personality, like traits that people might have. Are they all about really getting to know themselves and the world? Are they more about really getting to know others? Whatever word you chose, these are kind of the ideas or concepts that come to mind when you think of the word identity. Now we're going to explore this concept a little bit more through a text-to-text connection or text-to-self connection and move forward with this concept of identity. By doing this, we're going to create our own identity webs. And in the book shared by our author this week, she talked about identity webs being personalized graphic tools that help us consider the many factors that shape who we are. So that's quite a big concept when you think about it. Identity webs help us shape who we are. It's a graphic way to look at that. So in order to practice this concept and what identity webs might look like, we're going to take a brief moment to hear a story. And as we listen to the story, I want you to create an identity web for the main character in our story. So our story is called Emmanuel's Dream. What you're going to do is, on that same piece of paper where you jotted some notes about what the word identity meant to you, maybe at the bottom of the paper or on the back of the paper, go ahead and write Emmanuel's identity web in the center of the piece of paper. Once you've done that, I want you to look at the cover of the book and say, what do you know about Emmanuel right at this point in time? So take a couple minutes, again, pause the video, and jot down what are some things you can take off from the web, like what is his background, what do you see him writing, what is the background of the place he is, what does it look like? As much information you can glean from the front of the book, go ahead and write it down on Emmanuel's identity web. Take a moment to do that and pause the video, please. Okay, hopefully you've all done that. Taking a minute to write down whatever you can see or think of when you see the front picture of our book here about Emmanuel. You made your identity web. Now what we're going to do is watch a short read aloud of this story. As we watch the read aloud, I'm going to pause a couple of times, and I want you to, again, write down additional information about the identity web based on what you learned from the story. So let's go ahead and go to our video here, and let's listen to our story.
Emmanuel's Dream, the true story of Emmanuel Ofosu Yeboah, by Laurie Ann Thompson and Sean Qualls. In Ghana, West Africa, a baby boy was born. 2 bright eyes blinked in the light. 2 healthy lungs let out a powerful cry. 2 tiny fists opened and closed, but only 1 strong leg kicked.
Okay, go ahead and take a moment to add some information to your identity web about Emmanuel. What do you now know about him that you didn't know before? Okay, let's keep going with our story.
Most people thought he would be useless, or worse, a curse. His father left, never to return. But his mother had faith. Her name was Comfort, and she named her first child Emmanuel, meaning God is with us.
Okay, let's go back just a second and look at this page. What do we now know about Emmanuel that you didn't know before? Again, add to your identity web. Okay, let's continue with our story.
First child Emmanuel, meaning God is with us. As Emmanuel grew, Mama Comfort told him he could have anything, but he would have to get it for himself. He learned to crawl and hop, to fetch water and climb coconut trees. He even shined shoes to earn money. Most kids with disabilities couldn't go to school. Still, Emmanuel's mother carried him there until one day she said, "You are too heavy." From then on, Emmanuel hopped to school and back, 2 miles each way, on 1 leg, by himself. At first, nobody would play with him, so Emmanuel saved his money and bought something none of his classmates had, a brand new soccer ball. Of course he would share it, if he could play too. Lunging and spinning on crutches his grandmother had found for him and kicking the ball with his good left foot, Emmanuel earned their respect. His new friends sometimes used their lunch money to rent bikes. Would Emmanuel be able to join them? His friend Godwin pushed him fast so he could balance. Over and over again, Emmanuel fell, hard. But finally, He rode.
Okay, let's take another moment to add to your identity web on Emmanuel. What else do you know about him based on the story? Take a moment to write, please.
When Emmanuel was 13, Mama Comfort got very sick. She could no longer sell vegetables at the market, and Emmanuel's sister and brother were too little to work. He would have to support them. Against his mother's wishes, Emmanuel snuck out and boarded a midnight train to the bustling city of Accra, 150 miles away, alone. He didn't know it then, but it would be 2 years before he saw his family again. Emmanuel arrived full of hope. There were so many people, but no one would hire him. Shopkeepers and restaurant owners told him to go out and beg like other disabled people did. Emmanuel refused. Finally, a food stand owner offered him a job and a place to live. When Emmanuel wasn't serving drinks, he kept busy shining shoes. He earned money and sent it home. One morning when Emmanuel went to buy shoe shining supplies, the shopkeeper thought he was there to beg and scolded him. Insulted, Emmanuel slammed his money down on the counter. The shopkeeper apologized, but Emmanuel would never forget.
Okay, once again, look at the story and add additional information to your identity web on Emmanuel. What do you now know about Emmanuel that you didn't know before? Take a moment to write, please. Okay, let's finish out our story. Continue again to add to your identity web on Emmanuel as you learn new information about him.
But Emmanuel would never forget. When Mama Comfort grew sicker, Emmanuel went home to be with her. From her bed on Christmas Eve, she told her son, "Be respectful, take care of your family, don't ever beg, and don't give up." By the next morning, Emmanuel's beloved mother was dead. He was heartbroken, but he knew her last words had been a gift. He would honor them by showing everyone that being disabled does not mean being unable. It was a big dream, but Emmanuel had a plan. Emmanuel had a sharp mind, a bold heart, and one strong leg. All he needed was a bike. At first, no one would help. They thought his plan to bicycle around Ghana was impossible. Then Emmanuel wrote to the Challenged Athletes Foundation all the way in San Diego, California. They sent him a bike, plus a helmet, shorts, socks, and gloves. Emmanuel started training for the long ride. He persuaded the king of his region to give him a royal blessing. He went door to door asking for additional support. Finally, he hired a taxi to follow him with drinking water, a camera, and his best friends. Then Emmanuel tied his right leg to the bike's frame, jammed his left foot into a flip-flop attached to the pedal, and rode. Emmanuel pedaled through the bustling city of Accra. He pedaled through the rainforest, over the hills, and across wide, muddy rivers. He pedaled past Oldham forests and plantain farms and through the market city of Kumasi. He pedaled as trucks roared past on the narrow highways and wild animals stalked his thoughts. He pedaled through vast grasslands and into the ancient city of Tamale. He rode up, down, across, and around his city, proudly wearing the colors of its flag on a shirt printed with the words, "The Poso," or "The Disabled." Along the way, Emmanuel talked to those with physical challenges and those without, to poor farm workers and wealthy landowners, to religious leaders, government officials, and reporters. He wanted everyone to see him and his disability. He wanted everyone to hear him and his message. The farther Emmanuel rode, the more attention he got. Children cheered. Able-bodied adults ran or rode along with him. People with disabilities left their homes and came outside, some for the very first time. The young man once thought of as cursed was becoming a national hero. He completed his astounding journey, pedaling south to the sea and back up to Accra, nearly 400 miles in just 10 days. But Emmanuel's success goes even further than that. He proved that one leg is enough to do great things, and one person is enough to change the world.
Okay, take a moment to now complete your identity web on Emmanuel. What do you know about him? What did you learn? What additional information can you add? It can be about his personality. It can be about what he did. It can be about anything you want to put on the identity web. So take a moment to do that while I get us back to our slides. Now, if you look at your identity web, you'll see that it's probably much fuller than what you had at the very beginning. Think about that for just a moment. What did you put on the beginning of your identity web? Did you just have maybe he might be African American? Did you have that he had one leg? Maybe he rode a bicycle? Maybe he had a dream? That's probably the main gist of what you had. Maybe a little bit about might be a tropical climate based on the trees you saw in the back. But that's probably all. Now think about what you have now in your identity web. How is it much more detailed than what you had initially? How does it go beyond just a snapshot or image? Think about that and how that might apply to your interactions with others and how others might interact with you. Why is it so important now to get to know people's identities through webs like this? Okay, so let's go on and we're going to look at my identity web. I'm going to walk you through it, kind of tell you a little bit of information about me, and then we're going to work on our own identity webs. But let me start here. I put my name in the middle. I'm going to have each of you create your own identity web, so please kind of pay attention. You can put whatever is important to you on your identity web, but I'm going to kind of walk you through mine to give you an idea of what I put. I started out with wife, mother. I have one daughter, pets, and we have two animals, a cat and a dog. So I have TJ on there and I have Cookie. As you can see, I'm an excellent artist. Then I went to hobbies. I really like to go to movies. I like to do puzzles. I like to hang out with my friends. And then I go to my own family. So I have a mother, father, one sister, 4 brothers, and then me. It's kind of funny in our family. We have a little joke that my mom started out with the best, which was a girl, and ended with the best, which was me. Put those 4 boys in the middle. I'm originally from Utah, so I have the mountains there. That's what I really miss about Utah, not having those mountains. In Utah, I lived in both a rural and urban setting. So in the rural setting, I lived in Roosevelt, Utah, which is a really small town. We lived on a farm. I had to take a bus to school. We had to walk a mile to the bus. That was not an exaggeration. We did have to walk quite a ways. And then in the town itself, there's only like one stoplight. I also lived in an urban setting in Utah. I lived in Salt Lake City. That's where I went to high school. I was a JV cheerleader and a gymnast in high school. So those are kind of some things that are important about me and what I did there. When it comes to my own history, I like to say that I'm kind of a survivor. I've survived breast cancer, chemotherapy, a mastectomy, more chemotherapy, and radiation. Thankfully, I'm almost 5 years out, cancer-free, which is great. I've also survived many back surgeries. I've had at least 2 major back surgeries, and I now have steel rods kind of holding my back together. And then I've had lots of kidney stones. I've had over 5 surgeries just for kidney stones alone. My brother needed a kidney transplant, one of my older brothers, and unfortunately I told him he can't have my kidney because it's full of stones. So then as I came over here to culture, I want to talk a little about my cultural background. So for my parents, my mother was Mexican, my father was Spanish, so we identified as Hispanic. One of the things that's really important in our family are things like tamales. I drew a picture there, kind of a tamales. On my immediate, like my husband, he is also Mexican, directly from Mexico. And my daughter, we adopted from Guatemala. So I think we're kind of like an international family full of love. When it comes to traits, I feel like I'm a very loyal person. I've been married for 25 years as of April. I'm very dedicated as well. I've worked at Kansas State University for 20 years. I came here to get my my doctorate. I thought I'd be here 2 years and I've been here 20. It's a great place to be and live and raise your family. I also feel I'm very sincere with my students, my colleagues, my family, and my friends. So there's just some characteristics about me that I think are important. When it comes to my own education, I went to the University of Utah to get my bachelor's degree. I was a certified elementary teacher and I had a Spanish minor. Then I went to the University of Utah to get my master's with an emphasis in culture and ESL. And then finally I came to K-State to get my PhD in curriculum instruction with an emphasis in literacy and ESL. And finally, I'm an author of multiple textbooks, books on ESL and literacy, kind of building off of my dissertation. So that's what my identity web looks like. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about me. Now what I want you to think about is looking for connections. Is there any way you have a connection to something on my web? Or did you see something in my web that you might want to include in yours? So take a moment to skim through my web again and see if there's a connection. All right, now it's going to be your turn to make your identity web. So what I'd like you to do is kind of use the example from our story, the web that I shared with you, and a chart so you can kind of pull your own web together. I want you to make your web on a large sheet of paper. If you can do like the size of paper I showed you in the example, or maybe just two 8x10 or 8x11 pieces of paper taped together. On your web, make sure you put your name in the middle and then branch off however you'd like. Make sure to take a picture of your completed identity web and submit it to the discussion board titled Identity Webs. We're going to be able to take a look at each other's that way and kind of see what different people put. So please make sure to go ahead and submit your identity web once you have it done by taking a picture of it and uploading it to the file. As you're planning on that, I'm going to scroll back to my identity web again so you can get an idea of what you might want to put in yours. Again, it doesn't have to look exactly like mine, but these are different ideas or information you can share. Please feel free to add visuals to your identity web. As you can see, I'm a great artist. Not, just kidding. But any visuals you'd like to add to enhance it, and please use the full paper. Make it nice and big so we can see it and share it when you upload it. So that is one of the assignments due this week, the identity web. So please make sure to do that. Upload to the discussion board by 2/2, I believe is the date that it was due, which is Saturday at midnight. Now let's go ahead and go to our next assignment that is due as well. Before we get to that though, I want you to just take a moment, maybe after you've completed your identity web, to kind of think to yourself, what were some of the primary benefits of using identity webs, particularly with your future students, and how might you use them based on different grade levels in elementary school? What adaptations might you make if you were to implement the identity webs in your classroom? For example, a kindergarten student probably could not write out all the information I did on my identity web. So what adaptations would you make so kindergarten or first or second grade students could do this? And then any other thoughts or comments about identity webs, go ahead and think about that. If you have a question, you can pose it directly to me in an email. I'd be happy to answer it for you. All right, so as we move on from identity webs, we're going to look at our reflection connections. So please review if you're an A group, what you wrote for your reflection journal, and if you're a B group, what you provided the peers, what feedback you provided your peers in the critical peer reflection. As you look back at that, think about what was your biggest takeaway from this review and how might you apply what you learned. We will continue with our reflection journals to switch back and forth. So next week for Journal 3, Group B will be responding to the prompt and Group A will be providing critical peer reflections. So please again watch for the dates. Remember the B group, since they're responding to the prompt, will have the prompt open up on Friday and have until Sunday at midnight to do it. And then the A group, who are providing critical peer reflections, will have from Monday through Wednesday to provide critical peer reflections to the group. Okay, so I want to talk about one more thing, kind of building off or building into our next activity for this week, the power of names. So in the text, she talks about name origins and really getting our students to think about their names, where they came from, what they mean to them. And I found this really great story that I want to share with you about the power of names and how important it is to really find out and respect the background and pronunciation of our students' names. So this is a little poem from a book called My Name is Jorge, On Both Sides of the River. The poems are in English and Spanish. I'm going to read you the English side. but you can't see in the picture, but on this other side of the picture is the Spanish version of the text. And I really think this is good for students who are bilingual or ESL to really see this connection between English and Spanish. But let's read the English versions and kind of get a sense of why names are so important. The poem is titled T-shirt, and the little boy asks teacher, and the teacher says, George, please call me Miss Roberts. Yes, teacher. George, please don't call me teacher. Yes, I mean Miss Roberts. You see, George, it is a sign of respect to call me by my last name. Yes, Miss Roberts. Besides, when you say it, it sounds like T-shirt. I don't want to turn into a T-shirt. Miss Roberts? Yes, George? Please call me Jorge. So to think about that, how does this little poem right here demonstrate the importance of names? The teacher was really insistent that she be called by a certain name as a sign of respect, yet she was not calling her student by the appropriate name. So think about that and the implications for you as a future teacher. How will you avoid becoming a teacher like Miss Roberts? When we think about names, there are a lot of times and ways to celebrate student name identity. First, when introducing yourself to your students, you can tell them a little bit about your name and where it came from. For example, I was named after my grandmother and my mother. So Della was my grandmother's name on my mom's side, and my mother's name is Ruth, and I have her middle name, so Della Ruth. When you have a class that's very rich in diverse names, it's always good to really celebrate those names and their identities, have people share out information. When you're wanting to connect with students and among students, it's good to kind of do activities related to names. It also helps to build understanding and empathy for different groups of people, or maybe a particular group of people. When reading a story with names that may be new to students, like if you're reading a multicultural book and there are new names in there, kind of talking about that and how important different names are. And you can even celebrate names at a parent night, having parents share the story of their children's own name. So again, thinking about identity and how something as simple as a name really identifies who we are. So what you're going to do for this week as well, we have an identity poem that you're going to write. And this poem is from George Ella Lyon, and it's in a book called Where I'm From. And this poem has a specific template that we're going to look at here in a minute. But for her, for George, they started out the story like this. I am from clothespins, from Clorox and carbon tetrachloride. I am from the dirt under the back porch, black, glistening, tasted like beets. I am from the forsythia bush and the Dutch elm, whose long gone limbs I remember as if they were my own. So just by looking at this first identity poem, just the beginning of it, what sense can you get about the person? Where is George from? What is George's background and experience just from this first little bit of the poem? Now, if we take identity poems one step further, I'm going to read you my identity poem, and you're going to follow a similar format as this to make your identity poem. But in the corner, you'll see a picture of my family. It's my mother, my father, my oldest sister, and then my 4 brothers right here. So let me read you a little bit about my identity poem. I am from Comal, from Maseca and Rancheros. I am from the thump-thump of fresh tortillas being made at 6 a.m. I am from lilacs, the weeping willows whose long limbs I remember as if they were my own. I'm from Navidad and midnight mass, from Ruth and Benny Espinoza. I'm from tough love and yelling and from the smoke of my father's cigarettes. I'm from respect your elders and children should be seen and not heard, and I love you a lot forever. I'm from Sunday Mass and altar service. I'm from Salt Lake City and Mexico, Spain, the United States, and from tortillas and rice and beans. I'm from Pancho Villa and my grandfather who knew where to find his treasure. I'm from my family portraits and my mother's final letter to me that I keep in my bedside table. I'm from a proud Latina family filled with history, laughter, and love. So I hope you enjoyed hearing my identity poem. I'm looking forward to hearing yours. You're going to follow the format that's already uploaded into your discussion board. There is a template there that you can follow to create your own identity poem. In case you have any questions, I don't know if everyone's familiar with the comal, but that's like a black pan that you cook the tortillas on. It's like a thick little pan that you could cook them on. Maseca is the flour that you use to make tamales. And the rancheros is a specific type of Mexican song that my father used to listen to all the time. When it comes to Navidad, that's Christmas in English. Let's see, the little line right here about from Pancho Villa and my grandfather who knew where to find his treasure. My grandfather used to claim on my mom's side that his grandfather was part of Pancho Villa's gang. And when Pancho Villa buried all his treasure, he left a map for his gang members. And he was always trying to convince my dad to go find the treasure with him in Mexico. So we never really believed him, never found the treasure, but that's kind of the story there. And then we always had family portraits like the one here, so I have lots of those family portraits to kind of share. And again, I just wrapped up with a proud Latina family filled with history, laughter, and love. So for your identity poem, as I said, you're going to have a template. As you think about writing your identity poems, just remember, kind of like our author said, these poems are a window into the lives of your students, a stepping stone towards rapport and mutual respect in your future classroom. So we're going to, again, post these identity poems into our discussion board. That way we can look at each other's identity poems and kind of get a sense of who people are, to know them a little bit better. So go ahead and make sure to look on the discussion board tab for the identity poems and post your complete identity poem there. There is a template that's provided for you to create your identity poem. You can click on that, and when you're done, as I said, just upload it. So let's go ahead and look at where that is. So if you go right here into your discussions, you're going to see the first link, if it pulls up here. So you'll see the identity web, and you just go ahead and upload that. That's the one you're going to take the picture of and just upload it. Let's see, and then if you go into the next discussion, sorry, it looks like I'll fix that link here in a minute. You'll go into the identity poem. And the identity poem, here's the template for right here. If you click on the discussion board, you'll see this little link right here. Open up the template, and you'll go ahead, and you can just type directly from the template or write it, handwrite it, however you want. Either way, let's see, I need to download, there it is. So if I open up my template right there, I'm going to see you just fill in the blanks, and then you're going to go ahead and type up a completed identity poem, and that's what you'll upload into the discussion board post. So those are 2 key assignments you have to get done this week in your discussion boards. In addition to the journal, 3, you have to make sure to get your discussions completed for the identity web and identity poem. And then there's one other assignment. I know this seems like a lot this week, but we'll get through them all, I promise. There's one other assignment here, and it's called the Origins Flipgrids. We're going to build off the concept of the name origins that our author shared in the text, and we're going to make an origin Flipgrid that explores our surface culture, shallow culture, and deep culture. So for example, let's go to the Flipgrid link. If you put in the link that I included in the document, there's a document as we look back at our week 2. If you go to just the modules, week 2 module, you'll see in there the Flipgrid's origin directions. Just open those up. And after you open them, you'll see inside there, in the directions for the Origins Flipgrid, you'll see the description of what the assignment is, but then you'll also see that there is a link right here. If you just click on that link, it'll open up this Flipgrid site. And you're just going to record the information as directed. To the example of what that should look like, let me go ahead and play my Flipgrid for you so you can see kind of what I did.
Hi, my name is Dr. Della Perez, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my origins. Let's start with surface culture. In my family, we identified as Hispanic. My father was Spanish, my mother was Mexican. Both were born in the United States, as was I, so that's why we identify as Hispanic. I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah. I was raised there most of my life. I did live for a short time in a rural area called Roosevelt, Utah. We had a very small town, 1 stoplight, and then we moved back to Salt Lake City, Utah when I was in high school, and I attended high school there. Graduated from East High and then went to the University of Utah to get my bachelor's and my master's. In my home, Spanish was my second language. My parents were both native Spanish speakers, but in order for us to be successful in school, they knew that we needed to be able to speak English and be proficient at it, so they never taught us Spanish as children. We learned it as adults. I'm the first in my family. Well, my siblings and I are the first in our family to go to college, so we are first generation when it comes to attending college, but all my siblings have gotten some sort of college degree. When it comes to shallow culture, we were taught that you had to respect authority. There is no option but to respect authority. That any elder, any person in a position above you, they were considered to be the ones who knew, and you had to respect that. If we did that, we got praise as children. Also, we got good grades. If we followed directions, if we did our chores, all those things got us praise. When it comes to being allowed to ask questions or talk back to adults, that was definitely not allowed. My father had a saying, it was like children should be seen and not heard. So we definitely were not allowed to talk back or ask questions. We just had to do what we were told. When it comes to deep culture, my family is very collective in nature. That means that all of us are very involved in each other's lives. We're all there for each other. We all support each other. So in that sense, we're very collective. That's good in one sense, bad in another, because we all know everyone's business. When it comes to experiencing interpersonal conflict or prejudice, I have experienced that. When I was in second grade, I just moved to Roosevelt, Utah. I invited all the second grade girls to my birthday party. Two of the parents found out that I was not Mormon and I was Hispanic, so they did not allow their two little girls to come to my birthday party. So that's probably my first and harshest taste when it comes to prejudice. I experienced that very young, and kind of for that knew that as an adult I really wanted to be someone who advocated for differences and made sure that I was there for people who may be in positions where they are the minority. So I've gone on to really work in my career to advocate for English language learners, people from all different backgrounds and cultures, and I really want to make sure my daughter is also proud of her culture and heritage. Well, that's a little bit about my origins. Hope you liked it, and I look forward to hearing more about yours.
Okay, so from that, you can see an example of what your origins Flipgrid should look like. You have right here, if you go to the link, it'll bring you up to this page. You just tap and record. The main thing to remember is you only have 3 minutes to complete your origins Flipgrid. Beyond that, you'll be cut off, and you want to make sure you complete your discussion of your surface, shallow, and deep culture. So please make sure to follow those directions carefully and upload all 3 links, all 3 sections with the questions to get full credit for that. So that kind of takes us to the end of this week. We have 3 main assignments then: your identity web, identity poem, and origins Flipgrids. All of these will be due on Saturday, February 2nd by midnight. You also have the Reflection Will Journal 3 to complete this weekend and through next week. Please make sure to remember that Group B is responding to the prompt for Reflection Will Journal 3, and Group A is going to provide the critical peer feedback. As I said, I will be providing feedback on your first Reflectional Journal here soon, and then also second Reflectional Journal towards the end of the week. So please watch for those. If you have any questions at any time, please remember to email me or call me in my office when I'm here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. For the Zoom session, I'll be sending out a link. It looks like from the feedback I got, Friday morning and Friday afternoon will work best. So I'll send a link to both sessions and the times to your email by tomorrow. Again, have a great week. Thank you for all your hard work, and keep up the good work.